Hey everybody, welcome to the Overwatch Open. I am so excited to be here. I'm your host, Seltzer. Joining me on the desk, I have ZP and Ask Joshi. Guys, you've been here before. This is my first time joining you on the desk here. How exciting is this tournament process?
It's exciting. We're at the end of a very long road. Teams have finally gotten here to the playoffs. 16 teams remain from both EU and NA respectively, and over the next few days, we're going to be narrowing that down to 8 teams from each region, and they'll be going on to Atlanta to compete for their share of 300K, so couldn't be better.
That's pretty exciting stuff. And Joshi, some of these teams we have not seen a lot from. Some we have seen some amazing play from, especially as recently as last weekend. How do you feel about the quality of the games that we're going to see tonight?
Well, tonight we are starting out with Group A. We're going to be playing 3 matches for Europe and then 3 matches for North America. But the game should be quite good. We're seeing teams, like you said, that we haven't really seen in the past because our past broadcasts have been, round of 8 only moving forward. So some of these teams who got in just on points, we're basically debuting here on our broadcast, not just today, but throughout the week.
Great. Well, we have a little preview for you guys in the form of a recap video. Let's take a quick look at how Misfits got here in Group A.
Misfits were not the team on everyone's radar as they came into the first week of the Overwatch Open. It was teams like Rogue, Reunited, Creation and Anox that stole the spotlight as the tournament began. However, Misfits were able to prove themselves as one of the best Overwatch teams in the world as they took arguably the most difficult route to the finals out of all the 8 qualifiers. After taking down NIP in the quarters and then Dignitas in the semis, Misfits would finally come face to face with Anox. And after losing map 1 to Anox, Misfits managed to turn it around and string together 3 maps back to back on Lijiang, Dorado and Ilias to take it to a 3-1 victory overall and that oh so delicious playoff spot in the Overwatch Open.
Nothing like a little bit of gameplay to get you excited for what is to come tonight. If you guys are watching at home, you're getting excited, you want to join the conversation, you can join in on social media. Use the hashtag OWOpen. Don't forget to @Faceit and @ELEAGUE to let us know what you're thinking. Guys, you've had some interesting ways for people to participate before. Do you have any questions or suggestions for people trying to join us tonight?
ZP, anything?
I thought you were going to tell. But yeah, definitely. Of course, when Machine was here, Machine was always all about saying, send in your best jokes. And we got all sorts. We got jokes that were great to jokes that were just absolutely cringe-inducing. But when you get to that level, they're almost good anyways. So jokes are cool, predictions, and really just rep your favorite players because there's so many good players in the scene right now.
You know what? That's a great idea, ZP. You guys watching at home, let us know who your favorite players are, who you'd like us to take a kind of a deep dive analyst into, and who'd you like us to check out? Maybe we can even score some interviews with players throughout the night if we're lucky. But in the meantime, let's take a quick look at the format, how these players got here. We had early on the open brackets. So many teams came out to compete. We had to narrow that down into 32. And let's take a look at those teams. We had our group stage right now. These are GSL-style groups, so teams of 4 in a double elim bracket. Of course, we're going to have 2 teams from each group qualifying on, 8 teams from each region moving into those finals. Oh, and let's take a look at the leaderboards here. These are the teams to the left that have already qualified through the tournament structure, and on the right, the teams with points that are how they're getting through. So, ZP, what do you think of that?
Well, clearly, of course, you look at the 4 teams on the left. These were your powerhouse teams throughout. They were able to get through and win the grand finals in week after week of qualifiers, but there's no slouches here for the other top teams that qualified. Dignitas, of course, they've been on somewhat of a slump as of late, but they do have the potential to upset any of the teams on the left. NIP, of course, newly sponsored, used to be known as SG1. They've been on the rise. And FaZe, perhaps the biggest dark horse of them all. They used to be known as Reunited, and there was one week where they were known as Immortals, but they have been probably the fastest rising team in all of EU. But, of course, later tonight it's going to be Anox and Melty facing off, and that should be great.
All right, well, let's take a quick look at the brackets. First up is the A bracket, which we're going to be looking at tonight. We have Misfits versus Bikini Beach for our first match, followed by Melty Esports Club versus Anox. And we're going to have the winners map from that group coming up after that. Group B we can take a look at next. We have Rogue coming off a win at the Overwatch Atlantic Showdown last week at Gamescom. Well, as we have in here, we have FaZe, we have Preds, and we have GK. So That's going to be an exciting group as well. Group C, moving on, we have Reunited, one of those big teams again we saw last week competing. We have Bringos, another strong team, NIP, and of course the B-Fly, shortened right there on the brackets for you guys. And in Group D, let's take another look here. Luminosity, a big name in Overwatch right now. We have the Overwatch Kings, we have Dignitas, and of course NNY. No name yet.
Right.
No name yet. So let's take a look at the schedule for tonight. The first match, of course, like we said, going to be Misfits versus Bikini Beach, followed up by Melty Esports Club and Anox. And then we're going to have our winners match from those teams facing off tonight. Of course, our next team is going to face off tomorrow to get that second qualifier from Group A. So, guys, we have some exciting games ahead of us tonight. A lot to consider, especially with our second matchup there, Melty and Anox. But the biggest factor tonight is going to be the maps, I think, as well as our players. So I wonder what those are going to be. Guys, what do you think would be the ideal choices here for our teams?
Well, going in map-wise, right now teams they usually can't go wrong with going on sort of the Holy Trinity. We talked about it a little bit before, but teams have the most scrim time and practice on Dorado, Kings Row, and Hollywood. However, there's points where teams feel like, okay, maybe I have a mechanical advantage here, or maybe the other team just, for no reason you think they're stronger at payload, and you bring it to more King of the Hill style maps, Lijiang, Nepal, and so forth. I would expect for Misfits, they would be very comfortable going forward on payload maps because they are one of the older teams in the scene, and they are very well practiced and very well scrimmed.
Well, as we did find out from the Overwatch Atlantic Showdown, though, some of the European teams very comfortable on those two capture point maps, and not a lot that the NA teams can do in that realm just yet, but it is a pleasure to see the EU teams play on it. Joshy, any insight in here, what we might see from these teams?
Well, yeah, sometimes, as ZP said, basically the payload maps are going to be the de facto. You're usually going to have one or two of those sprinkled with some King of the Hill. Rarely we see the assault maps. I think I only cast something like 2 over the course of the 2 weekends I was here, so I think still out of favor, like you said, but they have been surfacing a bit more, so you can't be surprised anymore when you see Anubis or Hanamura actually crop up. It's Volskaya that's kind of the black sheep still of the assault maps for whatever reason, but you are seeing Anubis and Hanamura both pop up a bit more. I actually still am just a big fan of the King of the Hill maps. I think they are very action-packed, and it's really crazy to see some of the individual performances on those maps.
Very decisive maps. Like the King of the Hill. It doesn't leave a lot to question, but those 99-99 moments are especially exciting. You know, I wonder too what Misfits is looking for right here in their map pool. We did get to see them experiment a lot with some of the other teams in the recent LAN events. Of course, their choices in the Overwatch Open have been a bit more all over the board. So, who gets to choose here ultimately?
Well, that would just depend on how teams are doing it in the back way, of course. There is one of the things where if you're a team, like let's say that from the side of a Bikini here, where for whatever reason they figured, okay, Misfits has too much practice on payload, and otherwise we're going to try and go there, they would go out of their way to take out maps that are payload, so they would just sort of go out of their way to try and force maps more into that way. Usually when teams do that, it comes from an idea of, all right, we know the other team is really strong on this, we're going to go for this. It's more of a Hail Mary, but it does happen from time to time.
That is absolutely true, guys. There's a lot to discuss in the maps here, but I'm wondering about, too, the mental state of these teams. Some of them have had a bit of a relaxing week, have had time to stay home and practice. Have you had any opportunities to talk with any of the players over the course of the week? I know, ZP, you were at Gamescom. You got to spend a little more time with the players than we did hanging out with them. Any insights from them?
Well, as far as the players go, of course, they were all really focused on Gamescom and all that went there. But, you know, talking to them a little bit afterwards, of course, players got together after the tournament was all over, hung out for food and all sorts of stuff. And, you know, I think they are focused on what's going on here. They do have a little bit of split focus where there's big changes coming to the game right after this tournament. So some players are looking to the future. But in general, I think they're just going to take what they did at Gamescom, look at what didn't work well, and just try and shore up downsides as they move in here. A lot of teams, the really big favorites, think that things will be relatively easy going forward here, but the way I see it, there's definitely spoiler potential from the up-and-coming teams.
Absolutely. I mean, if Envious can be toppled, then anyone can be toppled. No one's quite got the reins of the top of the scene in their hands just yet. But what I was happy to see at Gamescom, and this was kind of one of the first opportunities since Agents Rising that Josh and I got to do back in California, where the players met in person. They really got to see each other face-to-face, to hang out. And I thought one of the most exciting things was how much they mingled. They really spent a lot of time talking to each other. Very friendly with each other. I thought some great attitudes there. What did you think, ZP?
Yeah, as far as the players went and talking, generally speaking, most of the teams do get along with each other. You saw them hang out. There was no real big rivalries. I think there might be 1 or 2 rivalries that could have come out, but that's not my thing to say on stream. There was a little bit of hot fire spit, but in general, the Overwatch community, the players do get along. Most of the teams are pretty in good spirits, and not just in a way of, oh, we have to scrim you to get practice. They do generally get along.
All right, well, fantastic. Just in time, we've got our maps, and it looks like the first choice is going to be Dorado, as you said, one of those Holy Trinity, followed by Hollywood, another of the Holy Trinity, and then a surprise third entry of Nepal.
All right, Nepal, happy to see it. If it is going to have something to break up the King of the Hill, or sorry, the payload monotony, I do prefer the King of the Hill to the Assault. So maybe we'll get to Nepal, maybe we won't. As you know, Misfits basically came in here as a #1 seed, Bikini Beach coming in as basically the bottom of the barrel. I don't want to obviously discredit them, but this is a bit of a lopsided match. Might not actually get to see Nepal.
All right. Well, you know what? I always hold out hope. It's such a beautiful map. As is Ilios, I was kind of hoping for that one too. I do like that final. Control point as the last map to avoid any sort of weird tiebreaker scenarios going forward. So that's very decisive in the end. But you know what? We're going to throw it to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got the very first match of Group A.